You're in the hands of an adolescent.
It's mystery. I don't like mysteries. Your bellyache. I gotta kill you right now.
Aye, sir.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Warp Core Podcast. I am UrzaMaster. Welcome everyone, especially with me as always, Lord Uther. And joining us today, Colonel Kurtz.
Wow.
Very...
The horror! The horror!
I think you need some cotton wool right here to pull that off. No, I love the moniker today. I'm so stoked, because we have caught up with current events in Star Trek Picard. We're on episode 14, guys. Hey, that's something to celebrate. 14 episodes in,
Nice.
talking nothing but Star Trek. We've gone through all of the films that matter, and now 2 seasons of the very fun, next-gen specific Picard spin-off series. And we are beginning the 3rd season, aptly dubbed The Next Generation. And I think there's a lot of things that are exciting just about that title. Not to mention the intro sequence, outro sequence. Everything about this season is just titillating. So to get a little background and to walk us into the glory that is Season 3 of Picard, I turn it over, as always, to our film expert, Colonel Walter E. Kurtz. Take it away.
Thank you, UrzaMaster. Thank you, Lord Uther. And thank you for all playing at home. Yes, indeed, we have arrived at Picard Season 3, currently airing in weekly installments every Thursday morning at midnight, when you can catch up on your favorite 25th century characters. I have to start off by saying, friends, Season 3 is a radical departure from all that we have shown you and spoken of before. This is not the Star Trek Picard we got in Season 1 or Season 2. And in many fans' respects, it's probably all the better for it. Because I think this is what people who wanted to see these crew members sort of come back for the grand finale, this is what they were really sort of hoping for. And we have a singular voice in the show running section this season. He started on Picard Season 2, but he is the one calling all the shots going forward for Season 3. Terry Matalas, a man so important, they've actually named a planet after him in the show, Matalas Prime. So that's a sign of respect when the writers start naming celestial bodies after you. But how did we get here with Terry? So, as we mentioned in our last episode, he was the showrunner for 12 Monkeys for about 4 seasons or so on the Sci-Fi Network. He joined the show in Season 2 when Michael Chabon, the Pulitzer Prize-winning author, moved on to other projects. You'll still see his name in the credits, but he's no longer actively working on Picard. And so Terry kind of came in to take the reins, but the plan was to kind of do Seasons 2 and 3 back-to-back, sort of save some money on production costs and all of that. Now, the great pandemic of 2020-21 kind of interrupted those plans, and they had to reshuffle the deck, such as it was. But basically, Terry started off on Season 2. We left about halfway through to concentrate fully on Season 3. And I think the results sort of speak for themselves, because as I said, both in tone, both in approach, this feels like an 8th season of Star Trek The Next Generation for all the right reasons. And it's hard-pressed in these first 4 episodes to find any real creative missteps. There is a couple of tribbles that I'll throw out there as we move along. But I mean, don't just take my word for it. I mean, you can tell literally when the show begins, they've now added a brand new animated intro, heralding that you are watching a Star Wars project. Lucasfilm actually started this off with their Star Wars projects on Disney Plus. It's just a little 10-second graphic, little music, just saying what you're about to watch is official Star Wars, Star Trek canon. So right away, you kind of go, ooh, that's cool. And then they've gotten rid of the opening title sequences. The first 2 seasons for Picard had very elaborate, very cool, sort of, graphic representations of the seasons that they were portraying. We saw the Borg cube in season 1, and we saw the vineyard and the solarium, the glass shattering, like Picard's childhood memories in season 2. But this show just wants to get right to it. They give you a title, they give you an episode, they give you an episode title, and we're off to the races. And they save all of the credits for the end. And this is the one of the most thrilling things for me is that we've also have a new composer this season. Stephen Barton takes over for Jeff Russo, and they're just leaning full into classic Trek scores. This thing is Alexander Courage's main theme. It is Jerry Goldsmith selections from the motion picture, from First Contact, and there's even, if at the very end, with the credits, there's sort of a nod to James Horner. It's not actually a James Horner piece, but it's composed and styled in such a way that you can't help but think of Star Trek II, Star Trek III. And again, it's for someone who's into film scores and the like, it's glorious to hear, big screen music being used on this property. So, I mean, stick around for the credits, even if that you like to, fast forward to the next episode, because it's beautiful to just listen to those notes one more time. And then we've lost already, the show starts, we've already lost 4 major characters from the first 2 seasons, whether their storylines had come to a natural conclusion or they just didn't renew their contracts. They had to make some choices. If they were going to bring back the Next Generation crew, you couldn't afford to have that plus counterbalancing with all these new faces. So goodbye to Alison Pill, Dr. Girardi, goodbye to Chris Rios, goodbye to Elnor. These are all characters that are no longer, at least as we understand it now, part of this narrative. They did keep Rafi, that substance abuse challenged friend of Picard's. Jerry Ryan is still very much front and center as 7 of 9. Very much.
Yes.
So there are a couple of holdovers. Laris, his Romulan love interest, Picard's Romulan love interest, was
but
in this episode. But
it was quick, right?
Right. No, I mean, as of now, it was just we'll see you when you get back, Jean-Luc, kind of a moment. But for the purposes of this tale, we're going to stay focused on characters that we've come to love over all these generations, and we're going to put them through their paces. And we're certainly going to talk about the most recent episode for a good spell here in a little while, on that very frontier. So, I mean, that's kind of the backstop.
Frontier.
I would say that you could watch this season without the other 2 and still derive enormous pleasure from it. It is possible. There are going to be some references and some things that might, take you aback at first. But I don't see any reason why you could not just plug in with episode 1 of season 3. I mean, if you're someone who's strayed away from Star Trek over the years, you're dissatisfied with Nemesis, you never picked up on Discovery or the Kelvin timeline or what have you, this show in its first 4 episodes is sort of a welcome back, and that might be enough to reignite your passion and your interest in the franchise as whole, or to again see how these beloved characters are faring. I've seen some online wags describe the same feelings when they saw The Force Awakens for Star Wars, the idea that We're seeing older versions of these beloved characters, and what have they been doing all this time? So that's something that I think the fans, you can get your arms around. You don't necessarily have to binge 20 plus hours of the previous seasons to feel like you've come up to speed here with these characters. And we're going to let UrzaMaster and Lord Uther kind of start us on our journey and what stood out for them in those first 4 episodes. My final sort of behind-the-scenes note, again, we just sang the praises of showrunner Terry Matalas. In television, a showrunner is like in a feature film, a director. It's literally what the title of the job suggests. While we have individual directors directing episodes, and they're busy trying to get the shots and get everything cobbled together, etc., the showrunner is addressing whether or not the set burned down, or the costumes don't fit, or somebody made a lewd comment at the craft services table. I mean, they are literally running the show, freeing up the director to concentrate on performance and what we're actually seeing on camera. So it's, as you imagine, a time-consuming, all-encompassing task. So it's always, for me, when you see a favorite show, right? You see something that David E. Kelley on television, legendary TV producer who's done L.A. Law and The Practice and countless shows. Whenever you see a showrunner on the writing credits, you know it's an episode to pay attention to. You know that they've taken the time and the trouble to say, I've got all these responsibilities, I'm working 17, 18 hours a day on little sleep and Red Bull, but I'm also going to craft the story that you are about to watch. So in these first 4 episodes, Terry has co-written or written 2 of them, so 50% already of what we've been seeing. And he will reappear, according to reports, in the writer's room for a couple more down the road. So I always say, if you see a showrunner's name in the writing credits, pay attention. You're in probably for a treat in terms of what they're going to be laying out. Like, this is an important episode. Do not sleep on it. And that was the case with the most recent episode that aired, episode 4, No-Win Scenario, which we'll be talking about. But anyways, UrzaMaster, I mean, it's in the 25th century, just like Star Trek II, told us 200 years before. We start with the blue title card, just like Wrath of Khan, and then suddenly, it's Beverly Crusher. And man, does she look different. And I leave it to you guys to kind of take us through your initial thoughts as we start seeing familiar faces in unfamiliar places.
Yeah, I think that was a genius move. I love the Wrath of Khan-esque intro, and I think that's going to have a big effect, as we'll see going down the line with this show. No indication as to that being totally forefront right now, but every choice in Hollywood is always some kind of a foreshadow. Every choice. So even if it's insignificant, it is foreshadowing something. And as of yet, I don't think we've found that moment. Or we have, and it's not as significant as I'm thinking. But I loved bringing in the Crushers. We don't know who's on the ship with her right away, but putting Beverly in a situation where she's having to gun down, bogeys is very fresh. I mean, even Insurrection didn't really give us much of any of that, and that had a lot of Western-style gunplay. I really liked the choice to work it into a callback to the communicator with Picard when she sends her coded distress call to his old communicator, and he's like, who the hell would be contacting me through this? And he's just like... And there's a lot of those moments in these first 4 episodes where he just sort of realizes stuff, and you can just see it play out on Patrick Stewart's face. And Patrick Stewart is a brilliant actor, but this is yet another angle of his acting that, honestly, I don't think we've seen elsewhere. I don't recall in The Lion in Winter him having these realization moments on his face. Or in Excalibur, or in, X-Men, any of those franchise movies that he was in. So it's exciting to see not just a new side to Beverly Crusher, but really a side to Jean-Luc Picard, who is very much an assured, confident, captain, admiral, who does still carry that same gravitas in these first 4 episodes, but there's a lot more vulnerability painted here. Again, I think it's tied to his age. They talk a lot about death. A lot of these episodes mirror and foil death in a big way from more than one character. I just think painting this picture of a ship in distress is just so classic Trek. But playing it out this way makes it a completely new experience so effortlessly. And as a Trekkie who's watched countless hours of Star Trek in my short life, I gotta say, I'm beyond impressed how they've painted this introduction to this 3rd season, highly anticipated, by the way. I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen more, aside from maybe Aaron Rodgers, I don't think I've seen more news coverage on a Star Trek show or any kind of pop culture thing going on right now than Picard Season 3. And it could just be the algorithms listening to me all the time talk about Trek, but there were a lot of wild ideas about how this season was going to open, all of which had some merit. But to start it this way was so much, well, like Uther said, it was very classic Trek. It was very core to the series, took what was maybe you could say an avant-garde first 2 seasons that kind of set a few things up, but really just told some stories. And then gave us this True Blue Season 8 that maybe we all secretly needed post-COVID. For my dollar, again, I think Picard is worth the money for Paramount Plus. Just in these 4 episodes. Please don't space them out any further in the future, Paramount Plus gods. But, I loved what they did. I loved that it was a crisis. It was a no-win scenario. And it laid the foundation again in such a perfect way. And I'm gonna stop it short of the scenes with Laris and because I'm dying to hear what Lord Uther thought.
Wait. Scenes with Laris? What do you mean? In season? Go ahead.
In Season 3, yeah.
In Season 3, Episode 1. Yeah, because after the distress call, it cuts back to Chateau Picard. But I'm going to stop short of that because I want to know what you think about Beverly in this situation. And
I think maybe not even. It needed to be Beverly, right? To get him to act that way. I mean, that's definitely what they were going for. Look, seasons 1 and 2. Kind of satisfied the Star Trek itch. This has reignited, the flame into a burning fire in terms of the passion that I think Trekkies are going to have for season 3 because, like you said, it's classic Trek. At first, the idea of another kid kind of was. I knew it was going to happen. I think we all kind of knew what was going to happen with that, with Jack. But I didn't know how I was feeling about that at first. But they've played that like a fiddle too. I mean, season 4 took it from just a kid first picking up the fiddle to just a masterpiece. The way they kind of wove that story and brought Jack into it. I told you guys, Jonathan Frakes, absolutely brilliant directing. The special effects are off the charts. I mean, it's to what you said there, Colonel Kurtz. It's like watching a movie every episode. I mean, with the way they've done the effects for it. So just something else that's been great.
If Bill Shatner had these effects in Star Trek V, we'd all be singing a different tune. But
jeez, yeah. I think if it ends here, I'm completely fine with it now, because no way was Nemesis going to be be the ending, right? And so I think the first 2 seasons, again, great. Third season, Trek, and now if it wants to stop, it can. It couldn't have stopped at season 1, quite frankly, even in season 2, to really kind of end it properly. So if they end it here, I can live with it. I don't think it's going to end here completely in terms of this generation of characters. That's my opinion.
Would you two have been okay if let's say it was, we talked about this at the end of season 1. What if season 1 had been it, and you got Picard and this battle to save the synths, and you got little walk-ins from Seven of Nine and the Rikers and so forth, Data finishing his story. We asked the question, if that was one and done there, would you have been okay with it? And for the most part, we agreed that yes, but there still might have been an empty feeling. We'll take the other thing. What if we hadn't had some of that context or background or anything in the first 2 seasons? What if we had just literally leapt to this? What if this is Picard? It's the miniseries. Would that, at least as we've experienced it up till now, would that have been enough to say, absolutely, game over, my verdict is rendered, this show is amazing? Or did we need seasons 1 and 2 to realize just how much of a game changer this one is? I'm curious whether you think, could this have existed in a vacuum and still been enormously emotionally thrilling and exciting and all of that?
Easily. That's how well it's written. Sorry, easily, because it's not only has it been it's been written that well. And I told you, both of you, top 3 episode easily. It might move into my number 1. It is so brilliantly acted. I would not have asked for one change from anything I saw. It bordered on. It's bordering on epic. I almost broke down a couple times. I wanted to shed a little tear or two. I think it was 3 different times during this episode. Starting out with, for any man, the idea of the loss of their child and the grief he's feeling. Like, I felt it. I felt it this episode when he talks about putting his kid 6 feet under. It's like, oh, how do you recover from that? I can't imagine. There's an old saying that, your children should never die before you do, because the grief is just unimaginable, right? And you could see Jonathan Frakes, that play on his face. And I know I'm going just to episode 4.
Oh, that's okay.
Because I think it is just, listen to me, man. I mean, it's epic. It might be some of the best television. And I said this to my Digital Escape Pod people the other day. I think we're living in another golden age of TV. There's so many different programs we could talk about. I could talk about the brilliancy right now of Mandalorian. I mean, it's brilliant. I was talking to you guys about Black Summer, the zombie series. It's amazing. It's fantastic. Strange New World. I mean, there's so much. Oh God, so awful. Last of Us. We're getting such. I mean, it's we are very lucky. We are very lucky to have this.
Absolutely.
So, I could live without season 1 and 2. I could not live without season 3. This is the proper ending. That's all I'm going to get at. Again, 1 or 2 ends, it's like, yeah, okay, I feel okay about this. Season 3, because everybody's back. That's what we wanted. We wanted Badass Worf one more time. And we're going to get it, right? We wanted to see... I think you're going to start talking to UrzaMaster. I'm just keep going here. But you wanted to see you wanted to see Riker and Troy in love. Like that last scene with the 2 of them talking. And here's I'm going to be better. We're going to make this is going to be okay, right? Like knowing that his wife is going to help him get through this, and there's a way to get through it eventually, right? Just amazing. We're getting a very slow, but still presence felt Jean-Luc Picard. To see him in the chair, getting the engage. Now, The only, and I said that this is a great episode. I saw the idea of using the energy wave to get out. I mean, I kind of knew that was eventually going to happen, or at least power up the ship. That's okay though. It's a kind of a classic Trek thing, I guess, in a sense. But which they make reference to that episode, not Farscape, Farpoint. Anyway, there's, and now I'm getting a 7 of 9 that I care about. Like, if she's 55 years old, by the way, which is, I can't believe Jerry Ryan's that old. You know, there's the 7 that I think she's going to get her own series, and I told you guys that too. But you know, you care about 7. The guy that plays Captain Shaw in episode 4, I went from, he's done this all season long. This is how great of an actor he is. I've hated him. I've liked him. I've hated him again. I liked him. This episode, I went from I like him, I hate him, I like him. I think I hate him again, and then I liked him at the end. I mean, but that's how good the acting was. He was turning me just like that. Boom, can't stand him again. I'm just so pumped up after this episode. It's just so. The bridge. I wanted the Enterprise F or J, whatever was going to come next, right? Or I'm sorry, the E. I'm okay with the Titan right now. If I don't see another Enterprise, I might be okay with that. I think LaForge might be commanding the Enterprise. That's my guess. I could be completely wrong. We'll see. But I would be okay if I only saw the Titan the rest of the way. I was that happy with it. So I just rambled on, but
No, it's all good stuff. It's all good stuff. I think we're pretty simpatico on episode 4. I guess just speaking generally, one, look, 21-year difference is not that big of a deal, Jerry Ryan. If you want to hit me up, I'm at UrzaMaster. My wife is going to watch this and be like, "Oh, you would." And she's like, "Drop my handle too, please." But
what about you?
I mean,
Can you disengage from the first 2 seasons? I know how much you love season 2. I guess that puts you on the spot.
I can't. I would not feel satisfied without Data and Q having endings, or at least knowing where they're at and what they're going through, and a resolution to B4, if I'm being honest. And I guess knowing that I'd be missing out on Jurati breaks my heart, because she was one of my favorite characters in both season 1 and season 2. You know, the other cast of characters, I don't really care. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff I love about seasons 1 and 2, but the biggest things is I need a conclusion to Data, and I need a conclusion to Q. Now, they could still, in season 3, and they may still even somehow angle both of those stories in here, to kind of even add those ties to this season just to give it a nice bow. But from what I've heard of the actors who were in it who lived through the conclusion already, enough doors are still open. Like, they could potentially make, stupid camera, they could potentially make, you know, more next generation material. And that to me says, and because I would hate to see, you know, the end of the series be a funeral for Picard, or, you know, a death, the Enterprise blowing up again, but this time the crew's all on it or something. Like, I'd hate to see like some mass kill off or die off of the cast. There's definitely a lot of interest in all of the cast members in continuing to play these characters. I mean, they have literally been these characters most of their adult lives, if not all of them, for some of the cast, Will Wheaton. And I think as an actor, with my very limited acting experience, I say this, by the way, as an actor, when you pour your heart and soul into a character, even if it's for 7 seasons, let's say, like they did, and then you go to convention after convention for years and years and years and years, and you see the millions and millions of Star Trek fans out there who just, they love you for that character. They love you as a performer, but they also love that character. And that's a kind of love that doesn't, to me, it sways your heart. I think Leonard Nimoy and Brent Spiner kind of learned the hard way of wanting to let go of a character just to do other things. You could still do other things and still be that beloved character to everyone. Like, I look at Brent Spiner in Independence Day. I thought he did an amazing job in both of those films, and I hope they still continue that franchise, because I was a big fan of the sequel. It was a little late, but I think they did a nice job. And I can see Brent Spiner as that character and not Data that whole time. I love what he's done with this show. He has an incredible range as an actor. And the thing is, like, you don't need to just walk away from this long time, 30, 40-year beloved character. And that's where I would be dissatisfied, not having Data and Q and, potentially there may be other Next Generation characters with doors left open that maybe they didn't dot every I and cross every T. We don't know. We haven't gotten there yet. I will say, if this is what we did get, I would fully anticipate that both of those characters would work in this season at some point.
Yeah.
So for me, at episode 4, I'd be like, yeah, as long as they bring in Q and Data, I'm good. Because we already know from commercials, Moriarty and Lore are coming back. So, all right, those are two major characters that I really want to hear from before they, call it, tits up for the series. So, I would struggle a bit if we didn't get that material from seasons 1 and 2. Now, I would also struggle if 7 of 9 just showed up in a Next Generation sequel series with no explanation. I love her story in this season. I love her story in seasons 1 and 2. I just love everything they're doing with her character. I think it's the depth that I always wanted from 7 and... Well, one of the depths that I've always wanted from 7 of 9. Not to be crass and crude, but it really is delving into a character that they did a lot of justice in Voyager to 7 of 9. But her not being featured in a film, the Voyager cast actually not being in a feature film, kind of makes me a little sad. Same with Deep Space Nine's crew. I think there's a lot they could do with both of those shows that they never have done. And I hope that Picard opens the doors, if, of course, they don't completely follow my plan that I laid out in the last episode, in which case they're going to tie up Deep Space Nine very well. But I do think that, you get characters from seasons 1 and 2 that you kind of need in this season. And I go to Laris in our very next sequence at Chateau Picard, and clearly they're in a romantic relationship. Now, it may not be a physical one, but it's definitely romance. It's definitely, it's a romantic setting. They're talking like lovers. Whether or not they're physical lovers or just emotional lovers or supports, in their advanced years, doesn't matter. And it doesn't feel ageist to be like, well, if Picard's laying the pipe with Laris, good for him. It's just like, no, this feels right. They've developed this character now in a way that makes sense and feels good. And you kind of want that for Picard. I mean, I think we always wanted Picard and Crusher to sort of end up together. But, what we get from this crafted story of the hidden sun, and, of course, in episode 4, we kind of find out that what was hidden was not so hidden, just maybe avoided. It's just, there's so much playing there that it doesn't just pull on your heartstrings. There's a lot of emotion poured into these first 4 episodes, but just the sense of duty and honor and commitment to crew. It's no longer just Picard's story. The show may bear his name, but this is really the story of the crew of the USS Enterprise. And that is extremely endearing to me as a fan. But it also really kind of represents why the films of the Next Generation and why there's such deep fandom. I'll even say it's bigger than the original series fandom. And I think it's because, as LeVar Burton put it very succinctly in an interview one time. They genuinely like each other. They like performing together. They like being together, and it plays. And they're impeccably good actors. And that plays out on the screen. And the chemistry between Will Riker and Jean-Luc Picard, as two old farts. I mean, I think Riker even calls them old farts, which is just brilliant. I mean, it's so natural. If they made a travelogue movie with Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart just going around drinking beer at various pubs in England, that's the only thing I could see where the chemistry might be a little better. But this is just, it captures this magic. And we get one of those moments again, like in season 1, which I relish because they take away that convenience excuse of Star Trek versus Star Wars, which I think Trekkies and Star Wars fanatics kind of have always battled over. It's so easy in Star Trek. They always get out of it. There's always somebody just hitting the yes button for them. Not so much. Captain Shaw, when we first meet him, is this lovable prick. I'd like to use a word I would borrow from the English, but in the interest of not losing fans, I'm not going to. But he's just a jerk, and it's so nice to hear Will Riker and Jean-Luc Picard, absolute legends of Starfleet, as they've been called over and over and over, being told, no, I'm not going to do that. I have orders. I have duties. I'm going to uphold my duty, and you old farts don't get to call the shots. You're retired. You aren't the captain here anymore. F off, basically. And have a good night, you former ex-Borg. And
you're going to sleep on bunk beds.
Right, and he puts them in Klingon-style bunks, which, by the way, I have to say, when you think back to the Birds of Prey, those bunks are damn close. With maybe a little bit more padding. So it's just, that sequence is just so humiliating for them, but funny. And even they're kind of laughing, but they're like, God damn it. It's, the humor here is just, I get back to my onion layers, right? This is the Shrek of Star Trek. It is so incredibly deep. And it gets back to this writer's room. This writer's room is absolutely brilliant for what they're putting together in these first 4 episodes. I'm really blown away because I look back having watched all of Next Generation, and there were some brilliantly written episodes, and there's some real stinkers, which felt very lackadaisical. The Game. We all remember the Game episode where everybody's got those dumb headsets and they catch little discs into holes, and everybody's getting high except for the 2 kids, Ashley Judd and Will Wheaton. And it's like, the kids are going to be the ones to get us off this addictive video game. All right. Okay. You just want people to put down their Nintendo. There's some weaker episodes. I still love that episode, but the layers that built up over 7 seasons, we are getting in a very condensed cinematic fashion. And that has caught me hook, line, sinker, and stinker, because I am absolutely balls deep in the show. It's so great just seeing how much they can paint into one small exchange. I mean, you look at when Riker and Picard are on the bridge of the ship, with Shaw, and he's realized they've basically hijacked the ship via 7 of 9, and he's like, fuck these two. He's like, how the hell? And he's like, well, you're fired, and I'm getting us the hell out of here. Yeah, there's a disabled ship, but F them. They shouldn't be in a nebula in the first place. It's kind of amazing. It's just so much packed into one sequence, every single sequence. And then you get these fresh characters, this callback to Ilea on the bridge of the Titan.
Yeah.
I mean, friggin' Ilea, of all the characters to call back to, why Ilea? You get LaForge's daughter. You get I think a Bajoran male.
A Bajoran
yeah.
male.
I mean, it's really well done. In a sense that's just how they thought of these subtle details. I mean, they know the bar they're living up to. So, I mean, we're barely halfway through episode 1, and we've talked a bit about episode 4. We're 40 minutes into a podcast. We've barely scratched the surface here. There's so many Easter eggs. We haven't talked about the fact that, the whole Frontier Day and all the museum ships they list in the end credits, one of them being the USS Voyager, one of them being the USS Enterprise. It's still Frontier Day, by the way. We have not yet hit even Frontier Day. There's a lot that could still happen. We've not seen why the portal weapon was on this random planet and not just on the Shrike. So we know there's more than one. And we also know that now the Shrike doesn't have it, or at least they jettisoned it. Will they recover it? Who knows? Does that come into play later? We've seen asteroids thrown. We've seen all sorts of new physics, new weapons, something to breathe some excitement. It's not just photon torpedoes anymore and phasers. It's so much more. It's these plasma rifles that leave gunshot wounds. I mean, look at Beverly in the first scene. She gets shot a couple of times, survives, and is on life support. Stasis chamber life support, near death's door. They could have easily just killed her off and been now we have to deal with her son. And how the hell are we going to get out of this? Skipping ahead a bit to episode 4, this is a Kobayashi Maru callback. The no-win scenario. How do you beat the no-win scenario? You hack the game. I mean, they hacked the ship to beat the no-win scenario because, again, they're bringing back, and Lord Uther and I talk about this all the time, that team synergy. That they know this is what they are great at. This is the key to their success. Whether it's life and death or no-win scenario, you find yourself rising above because of your crew. But it's not just the Enterprise crew, the old farts. It's the new crew, too. Adding this element in. So again, this is the best sheet cake you've ever had. I want to see who jumps out the middle.
Let me tell you how you also know the writing is fantastic. Things that are thrown in that should kind of be cheesy aren't. Like when he explains why the holodeck is running. That could be an easy, cheesy, crappy throwaway line just to give an excuse, but it's written beautifully and it's delivered even better. When we get the whole teamwork scene, the only way this is really going to happen, let's go team, is we have to work together like we have before because we've done this and because we're great. And this is why we're legends. But it's delivered and written perfectly that it comes off natural and not even preachy or speechy like. That's what was great. I also like seeing that we got the payoff for the peril they had been in for 2 episodes when you could have started going, just get out of the nebula. This is going nowhere. What is the point of this? Even that finish, though they harken back to an episode and you kind of saw it was coming, but that's okay. Because even knowing it was going to happen, it was still great. Where you could be sitting there going oh, Jesus. Oh, of course they're going to ride the sound waves out. Hello, undiscovered country. It's Sulu, Captain Sulu and all this stuff. Or I guess I was actually thinking of them flying into the waves.
And Farpoint.
And Farpoint, yeah. But even that's done tastefully. I
honestly, I didn't even see it coming. I was wondering why Beverly was counting the contractions, and it's okay, it's a bioforce, but I was thinking, here's my dumb fandom, sorry to interrupt, but I was well, this would be a perfect time to introduce Moriarty. He grew beyond his little shuttlecraft, ended up becoming this electrical, metaphysical being that looks like a nebula. He's trying to reach out and communicate. He's got to find a way to do it. Hey, they've activated the holodeck. Here's my chance.
Oh, that would have been great.
So, I mean, that's where I thought it was headed, honestly, because I'm how else are they going to introduce him? And then, of course, I was Farpoint, of course. And the creatures look like the Farpoint creatures. So, full circle, they let him go. They saved him, and they got saved again by this. Anyway, sorry to get back to
No, you're fine. And you basically have the scimitar there again, but it's done right. It's done right. It's not this cheesy ass ship, right?
But the eyes, they're so similar. I broke my jaw. I lived in darkness.
Look at you.
Sorry.
Now, if you can give me a Bane line, it'd be perfect.
Sorry, I'm going to laugh through this.
I grew up in the shadows and the dark of Venus. You merely adopted the dark by turning the lights down in successive seasons and movies. You're dark on that bridge of the Titan.
Very good. Very good. Wonderful. But we get a ship that's believably better than a Federation ship. Not even completely overdone, like believably better. And I also like, and they made this point a lot. I don't know if you noticed this. The Titan's not as strong as the Enterprise. The Titan's kind of an average ship. It really can't do, and they kept kind of doing that over and over and over again, which I also think kind of sold the idea of that ship having some power. In the playoff on Vladik, I did not see that. Is that her name?
Vatic.
Yeah. I did not see her doing whatever she did. Someone's got to explain that to me. Is that a changeling that's attached to her? And then I had a thought on the voice at the end. We need to decide what that voice is that Jack hears at the end. It kind of hit me as to who I think it is, but I'm jumping all over the place.
Well, let's talk episodes 2 and 3 a little bit. Because, of course, we get Rafi back, but she's nowhere near any of our other cast and crew here. She's deep cover, working for Starfleet Intelligence, trying to find information on some stolen weapons, which she's got this anonymous person giving her directions. She's pissed at him. She's trying to keep off the drugs. She's pretending to be a junkie, living in that life, and dealing with, hey, the Orion Syndicate, Deep Space Nine, anybody? Chief O'Brien, one of the best characters ever. And balls deep in this investigation, trying to figure out, knowing there's this big attack coming, and then it's an attack on something relatively insignificant, if we're being honest. So it's clearly a diversion, and it's a diversion from whomever purchased this, whoever broke in. We get to see our first Ferengi on this. We're first Ferengi in a while. That wasn't a skull anyway. And the baseball, Cisco's baseball, is right there. Worf gets it back. Worf comes in as a total badass, but is very Worf. Makes her tea. She has to inject some drugs into her eye.
Do you take sugar?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know yet what's going on with Rafi and Worf. And I'm wondering if we're going to see two halves of the crew that eventually reunite. Where Worf and Rafi are going to eventually run into Geordi. And they're going to run into Lore. And then the other half of the crew is going to run into Moriarty. And then through whatever hijinks, they're going to end up somehow running into each other, realizing they're on the same path, and then, stealing the Enterprise. I mean, that's a trope that I would really love to see. I shit you not, if they go and steal the Enterprise E on Frontier Day, I might have to whip it out and do some self-pleasure time, because that is one of my favorite things they did in all those movies was fucking stealing the Enterprise.
One of the greatest scenes ever, with the music too.
Oh,
amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and not to mention the fact that they're bringing back changelings in a big way, and that Worf was tipped off by, presumably, Odo about what was going to happen. We haven't seen the depths of that yet, but we do know that holy shit, a new Dominion war would be a big deal. But we also know that presumably a good chunk of the Great Link is not for war, but who knows where the Jem'Hadar are going to fall out? Who knows what these aliens are that are working for Vadic? Who knows Vadic's backstory? Clearly she's in a rock and a hard place, whether she's a bounty hunter who made a bad deal, or somebody who was wronged in some way by Picard in some other sense. There's a lot of unknowns here, but again, it gets back to that layering of textures and flavors and callbacks to these 3 series that were all running essentially concurrently if you count syndication of TNG. I mean, it's even outside of Picard. If we hadn't seen Picard yet, 3 episodes deep, let's say, and the 4th episode is our first introduction to Picard and where he's at, they could do so much with just the other characters going on. And we don't get a ton of backstory on Shaw and Seven. What have they been up to in the ensuing year or however long it's been? Bear in mind, too, Picard is still a synth, and he has yet to tap into his synth strength, synth speed. He can still do all that stuff. His limitations are by choice, essentially, at this point. So he could lay the pipe if he wants to. I'm just saying. But there's so much potential here, and that's why I think, truly, I think that you see in this season why there's doors still open is because there's still potential for all of these characters to do things beyond whatever the payoff of this season is. Whether it's a partial crew, whether it's a Captain Worf, or a Starfleet Intelligence featuring Worf, or Captain Riker goes back to the Titan, or some new exploratory show with 7 of 9. I mean, it's really, truly beautiful. I mean, it as a Trek fan, they've taken what the first 2 seasons were essentially fan service, even though I think they were wonderfully done, and elevated fan service to this new level of, like, almost crafted fan fiction on, like, writer steroids, like professional writer steroids. And I mean, there's great Star Trek fan fiction out there. Basically, the book series is fan fiction if you boil it down.
Yeah.
So there's that potential there. So, you see that kind of unfold in episodes 2 and 3 where it's like, Riker gets command of the Titan. That was a payoff we needed, I think. We needed to see Riker in a captain's chair. And then Admiral as number 1, I mean, holy crap. That was something we needed to see from TNG days. And then all of a sudden we kind of get the flippity flop of their relationship where it's like, you've just killed us all. I mean, what a line for Riker to say to Picard. Remove yourself from the bridge, you just killed us all? Like, and again, it harkens back to his personal struggles, which is another layer of, I mean, I'm with Uther here. I was holding a baby or a 1-year-old throughout most of my viewing today, but it was still powerful. My 2 sons. I was like, holy shit. It's tugging on your heartstrings in a way that I think the original series, I don't want to say shied away from, but certainly didn't embrace as wholeheartedly as we're getting here, and it's a truly wonderful thing they're doing.
Yes.
I have notes. So, okay.
Oh, great. Here we go.
So here we go. Strap
that would be
in,
his
Joe.
shirt. See?
So,
I have notes. Go ahead.
Okay. So, I started off on the top, in the 25th century. There's several Wrath of Khan, and I don't want to say that it's not the same as in the Kelvin timeline where they literally tried to redo some of those beats, beat for beat, just with different actors in a different, context. But the nods to the average or the diehard Trek fan are too similar to ignore. Case in point, our hero, Picard, gets a message from a long-lost ex-love
Ah, yes.
with a hidden son that he didn't know about and responds to a crisis in waiting. So when they first meet up, the son is resentful of the father figure. You know, it's unclear when we first meet Jack Crusher whether or not he's aware of the parentage or not, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But when we first meet him, it's unclear whether he even knows what role this man has in his life and so forth. But he's acting like David Marcus did to Kirk on the Genesis planet. There's a nebula, obviously, you know, the hide and seek, not in the Mutara Nebula, but in this one with the Shrike. And I disagree with Lord Uther strongly. The scimitar was green. It was a beautiful color, and I'm not so much sold on the bright orange Shrike there. So, in terms of saying it was better, so I think green is gold.
We're just celebrating St. Patrick's Day in a really long way.
Indeed. But let's talk about that Riker moment with Picard in the end of episode 3. Let's talk about Riker's character overall, because I don't want to say that the writers are sort of retconning this, which is a popular phrase to toss around when you try to fix something that fans weren't crazy about before, because then I don't think anything necessarily was broken. But let's look at how we've seen Will Riker in these seasons. One of my favorite episodes of season 1, episode 7, had Picard taking refuge on a forest world with, on Nepenthe, I believe it was, with Will and Deanna and their daughter. And they talked about the loss of their son, which Will talks about with Picard in this episode as well. Now, I understand that, you know, when you're mourning a tragedy and all of that, you have better days than some, and there are days when it can completely feel overwhelming to you and you don't want to engage at all. And so on that first season, we saw them barbecuing and being together and being the loving Rikers that we wanted them to be following their marriage on Nemesis. I had a brief qualm, which I got over, in thinking that Riker's emotional reserve towards the death of his son had somehow fractured or pushed away Deanna. Because just based on what I was shown, that didn't seem to be the case in season 1. Now again, we're seeing a snapshot of the Rikers.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But the way it was approached in this show, it was as if to say, shortly after that death, Will started to retreat into himself. His wife's an empath. Obviously, she's going to pick up on it. And you got the sense that there was this sort of long, slow crack developing in their relationship. Well, that's a great thing to play. And I think that in this season, with this message that he tries to record to her and eventually delivers to her over the holoscreen at the end of episode 4, I think it pays off wonderfully. I just think it's not exactly how we were shown them to be in the first season.
Right.
And I think that, and I think the only reason that stands out to me, the only reason that I question that, is because this show goes to great lengths to suggest that that's been an ongoing fissure in that relationship. So, again, does it detract or somehow mar the what we've been talking about? Absolutely not. But it's just a case where it doesn't quite line up with how we had seen. You know, it felt like the Rikers in the first season had been a family who pulled together and were resilient and strong and loved each other, and you got that sense, right? The joy that they saw when Picard came to visit. And so I thought that this one was kind of a, you know, one step forward, two steps sideways kind of telling of that. Now, it's some of Jonathan Frakes' best work in front of the camera. I mean, I think if we were ever going to assess Star Trek performances, acting, you know, we would say that Patrick Stewart is at the top of his class, bar none. And then the other cast members, to varying degrees, either grew into their roles and became, you know, strong, stalwart contributors. But, you know, they weren't always at the same level, if you will. And I think Jonathan Frakes, you know, going back to season 1, he was perfectly serviceable as kind of a Kirk stand-in, right? That's what he was there for, to be the muscle, to be the good-looking William Shatner light, because the captain's now bald and a Shakespearean actor. But as he's gotten older, and as they've given him these beats to play, he's been more of an up to the task, And I think Jonathan Frakes spends most of his days behind the camera now, as a director on television and features and so forth. But these episodes with Will, these first 4 episodes, that sort of grin he's giving Jack as Jack is pacing in the corridor. It's just this. It's so intensely Riker, and you recognize it throughout all of your viewings there. And it just comes to him, as naturally as you would, putting on makeup. Like he's just like, is everything okay, kid? Like it's just, he's the guy you want to share Romulan ale with at the 10 Forward bar. So I think his performance was top notch through this. I think the writers did a service in these 4 episodes. This is almost a little self-contained mini arc, right? I mean, obviously we have a heck of a lot more story to get to, but we've had, there was Beverly and Jack needed help. Picard, Seven, and Riker, maneuvered their way to go and help them. They encountered a force just outside Federation space that meant to do them harm. They very nearly lost their lives in the rescue attempt, but they managed to outwit the bad guys to help along a new species come into being in the universe, and now are making their way back to Federation, while all the while we have a subplot that will soon probably become the main A storyline of Raffi and Worf discovering an insidious conspiracy involving what I believe, I think UrzaMaster's correct. This is going to be like Patriot Games, the Tom Clancy adaptation. We're dealing with an ultra-right, violent splinter of the Great Link and the Changelings, the ones who want to go to war at no matter the cost. So I don't know if we're going to get a full-on Dominion reincursion, although that's certainly what will happen if someone plays their cards wrong on the table. But I think what we're dealing with here is a fairly small, well-organized, militant group that is seeking to reignite this galactic conflict. And if they're successful, then it's just all hell's going to break loose. So I think that's kind of what we can probably be primed to expect, is exposing the conspiracy, who could be anywhere, anything, that paranoia that's so good when you have the changelings there. My second tribble would be in episode 4 with Captain Shaw. Now again, Captain Shaw, who is played by Todd Stashwick. He was a cast member on 12 Monkeys, so Terry Matalas brought him over from 12 Monkeys. He's done millions of TV shows and a few features. He's just one of those working actors. You're like, I think I saw him on, NCIS.
Yeah.
Kind of, he does those. He's great as a crusty Chicago, Liam Shaw, and like you say, he starts, our first introduction to him in episode 1, he's already started dinner. The captain, he couldn't be bothered to meet Picard and Riker with the ensign's boatswain that they took from Star Trek 2 when they first enter the Titan. The captain will see you for dinner tonight, and when they come to his quarters, he's already halfway through the entree. He's like, well, your reputation's preceded you, so I wanted to get an early start, just a complete asshole-ish thing to say. And then, yes, as UrzaMaster points out, I mean, he is an obstacle. He's not William Atherton in Die Hard, or the FBI guys outside the building where you're just face planting at how stupid. You can see his point of view. He's playing it by the book. He's not going to go outside, color outside the lines, which is exactly what they've spent their careers doing. But you get it. He's not just being obstinate to be obstinate. But eventually, we remove him from the front lines, and our guys take over. But then in episode 4, he's recovering from his head injury. He's sort of resigned that he and the rest of the crew are doomed, as their ship is. I loved the imagery of a sinking ship, if you will, in space. A ship that has no power, can't revive itself, and is being pulled into this basically a black hole, a gravity well, that's just going to crush them. with gravity, and they'll either freeze to death, die of asphyxiation, or worse. Just it was beautiful imagery that I don't think that we've seen too often. Certainly not on the big screen. He comes into the 10 forward holodeck, and he gives a long and emotional and, again, very well done speech attacking Locutus, a.k.a. Picard, for his involvement at the Battle of Wolf 359. And for anyone who's never familiar with that material, they're going, oh my gosh, Picard killed all those people at Starfleet, while being, under the control of the Borg. Of course he'd be angry with them. And the only problem I had with it, because it was well done and was well acted, was that Benjamin Sisko gave Picard pretty much that same speech in the pilot of Deep Space Nine in Emissary. And when those two first met, as Sisko was taking command of the outpost, he reminded Picard. And I guess it was just, I guess I'm just old and I've seen a lot of Star Trek, but I just felt like hitting that note again, that would have played better had I not been a Deep Space Nine viewer. It would have had the same, it wouldn't have had the same sort of repetitive feel, I guess. And again, don't take away from the scene. It's a great scene, and it's a great motivator, and it also explains why he gives Seven such a hard time. Think about it. I mean, the Borg killed his friends, killed his crewmates, killed, people he served with in Starfleet. So in just one speech, they're able to unlock all of this. He's not just being a dick because, she's a first officer who can't play by the rules. He's got something very personal, very in there. And so then what makes it great is those two are basically forced to work together to, hotwire the ship and track down this rogue changeling, which is also handled in a very satisfactory way when it comes in the guise of LaForge's daughter at the helm. And of course, viewers are like, well, shouldn't you be at the helm? So, but Seven gets there and turns her into goo, and that was a nice reveal there. I think the best thing we can say about where the show leaves us with episode 4, I think it's a show that an episode, and Terry Matalas co-wrote it. Every character, whether it's Beverly figuring out that they're actually in the womb of an alien entity and that these energy contractions can help get them out, to Riker getting them, leading them, if you will, with the nacelles, and we're going to hotwire it, to Picard guiding them through the asteroid belt, to Seven and Shaw, tracking down. Everybody gets to shine. Every character is important. There's no fifth wheel, extra cog. This piece is just here. Beverly's just here to be a nag. Everyone gets to demonstrate their utility and their ability. And that's why we don't cut away to Raffi and Worf. We stay with this crisis, this crew, the whole episode. It's a ship in a bottle episode. It's just these people having to beat the no-win scenario, which is the name of the episode. And so they're not a hostage to the conventions of storytelling, where it's just like, okay, well, Picard has to be the hero. It's his story, and he'll come up with all the answers, and everyone else will just push buttons, and everyone gets to play a part in the solution. And then the show ends. Throughout this, we've had these flashbacks to Picard trying to enjoy a quiet dinner of haddock, being pestered by some Starfleet recruits, ensigns and the like, who want to hear about all his stories. And, you imagine if a celebrity's trying to have dinner and people keep coming up for selfies and autographs. And so he's telling these tales to them, and they're all hanging on his every word, and he's enjoying the attention, despite the fact his lunch is getting cold. And then UrzaMaster referenced it earlier. Sitting at the bar, right? And we've come to, in these first couple of episodes, believe that Picard and Jack Crusher don't know each other, have never seen each other, they're just whatever. And he's sitting right there, a little bit younger, maybe. And he asks Picard, well, what about a family? Did you ever think about just settling down, to groom? And Picard, not knowing who he's speaking to or whatever, just, gives a very casual, pat answer. Well, Starfleet's my family. That's the only family I've ever had room for. And the cadets, they break into applause, yip, yip, hooray for Starfleet. And you can see the look on actor Ed Spiralus's face. You might recognize him. He did a turn for a few seasons on Downton Abbey as a footman. That's how I recognized him. And just the hurt. And suddenly it's recontextualized, right? Suddenly all their interactions through the first 4 episodes suddenly take on a whole new... And the moment that they both realize that they both remember that moment is done with no dialogue. It's just a close-up on Picard and a close-up on his son, as if the son is basically accusing him, saying, yep, that was me. You remember that moment? And he's remembering that moment in the moment and saying, my God, I basically gave my son the brush off emotionally. It's the same when he figures out that Jack is his son in the first episode with Beverly. She comes on the bridge, having been revived, or maybe it's the second episode. She doesn't say, he's your son. She just looks at him, and he looks at her. And this long, unspoken history spanning, countless decades unfurls just right before our eyes. And what's being said, but they don't say a word. And that's to point out Lord Uther's thing, just brilliantly performed, that shorthand in terms of that there. And I also want to give a shout out to, how are we saying her name again, UrzaMaster? Vadic? Is that correct? Okay, Vadic. That's Amanda Plummer, Christopher Plummer's daughter. Christopher Plummer, who played the General Chang in Star Trek VI. And she was Nettie Cobb in Needful Things, which is one of her more normal roles. And she played Honey Bunny in Pulp Fiction. I think they were trying to hold
Bunny.
up a diner.
That's it.
Yes. So she's made a career, unlike her father, of playing a little more eccentric. She has kind of an eccentric look about her, kind of wild-eyed and feral in some instances. So she'll be a nice villain. I think, based on what we saw with her contact with another changeling that somehow biologically may be a part of her, if you will. Obviously, there's going to be something behind the villain. I mean, she's I think a minion still. So there'll be a misdirect here, and then we'll get the big bad probably in the next couple of episodes, or at least a suggestion of where that's leaning. And we end with Jack, and I mean it's somewhat ambiguous as it's meant to be, and this will unspool. But given his history as somebody who kind of operated on the gray side of the line, someone who may have stolen weapons to give to resistance fighters and medical supplies and things like that, if I may speculate, I wouldn't put it past him that he is responsible for some sort of theft or something that he has that the changelings, are basically, that's why they're so intent on recapturing him, because he's made off with something that's, valuable to them, whether he knew it or not. It's, he's kind of like a Star-Lord, Guardians of the Galaxy, kind of happy-go-lucky kind of rogue. I would suspect that that's what these flashbacks are insinuating, that he's seen something or taken something or done something that obviously has made some enemies. So I mean, and then Picard's going to be like, "You're not taking my son," and then we're gonna really throw down there in the future episodes to come. So
what I thought was, this is all UrzaMaster's fault, that he might have some time travel, or might have some traveler ability, and that the Borg Queen was calling out to him.
Interesting.
It's probably way off by the look on Urza's face right now. But I think it's important that I at least throw that out there to acknowledge the possibility of the Borg Queen somehow being involved this season. Very.
The
I thought it was going to be
Borg,
Cisco. Right? Yes, I thought it was going to be Cisco reaching out to him.
Are you ready for this journey? Because I'm ready.
Shit. Am I close?
Actually, yeah.
Yes, Gary.
So my thought was, because the voice says, "Find me," open the door. Well, there's a few things that this could relate to. One is the Great Link, which I think there could be some borrowing of genetic material or some kind of link through actual, founder DNA in his DNA through one means or another. Unclear. And it could be the Great Link calling out. Now, that also leads me to the little thing that's unfurling behind him, which sort of looks like a blood clot or something along those lines, and then an opening door. Well, the opening door could be the wormhole. The blood clot could just be a non-linear traverse through time and space. And who in Star Trek history also had a voice reaching out saying, "Find me. Come to us." Cisco. So I think no matter how you slice it here, I think at some point our crew, everyone, ends up on Bajor. And I think that our battleground, once again, will be Deep Space Nine or the wormhole to the Gamma Quadrant. And there'll be some need to diffuse a situation with the Dominion. But it'll be a red herring because it's not the Dominion's doing. It's a fragment group or an individual that is also tied directly to the Borg. And I think what we will find is that the Borg Queen has used their Borgly powers, with Jurati's knowledge of the future, to try and adapt and assimilate a founder, which was not something they ever crossed hairs with in the actual shows. And that being the case, my thought is the Borg were unsuccessful. And we know from Season 2, or Season 1, I forget, that Borg technology is hot on the black market. Right. So what if, spinning this circle out farther, to procure supplies, Jack ends up getting some Borg technology to resell? Well, one of those nanites might be carrying the successful adaptation and assimilation of founder DNA, and now that nanite has infected Jack Crusher, because they're really going hard at Picard for being former Borg. Maybe Jack has some Borg in him and some founder, and the founders want to use that to their advantage, or at least this splinter group does, to not only infiltrate the Borg, but also the Federation, and potentially unleash whatever hell the Borg are guarding, which would completely obliterate the Federation and allow the Dominion to reassert control. And then they would just have to gain control of the Great Link, move in, and basically take over, which is their MO.
Wow.
Now, what powers that be could stop that process? Picard and Cisco. Picard has the background with the Borg. Cisco has the background with the only true, ultimate foil to staving off any kind of Gamma Quadrant foe, which is the gods, the Bajoran gods, and their name escapes me yet again. And I really would like to see Pa Wraiths as well, and a return of Gul Dukat. I think that is a possibility. I think Mark Alamo's still alive, or did he just die a year or two ago? I don't remember. But I think there's just a lot of potential there, because you're thinking about the tier of villains and entities and their power throughout all of Star Trek. Number one is Q, or similar entities on the same level. Number two is the gods of the Bajorans, and then number three is the Pa Wraiths, and then the fourth is the Borg, or the Jem'Hadar, and then the fifth is the Borg. And then the founders are number six, or some, the top six are basically play out in some sequence of those. You could get all of the heavy players, plus you get Lore, who's on the top 10 list, I think, of most dangerous enemies. And then, of course, you also are going to get Moriarty, who's also on the list of the top 10. We've already seen the other heavy hitters in one piece or another. The only ones we're probably not going to see are like the Klingons and the Romulans and they made mention of the Hunters from the Delta Quadrant. I forget their name. It was in episode 4.
Persian,
and it's just like
something like that.
Something like that. I forget. And I should have wrote it down because as soon as I heard it, I'm like, oh. But they're roping in a lot of the big money players. And honestly, if you were going to give one last power punch at the end of ostensibly, let's call it the late 80s and 90s era Star Trek shows, would your power punch not involve all of the above parties? I mean, honestly, the only thing I would regret is not getting, Q or God, in there. I mean, and that's still not out of the realm of possibility. There's still a whole continuum of Q. We could still see a new Q, and that would really open some doors for future Star Trek series. And I think, if nothing else, and I know Paramount is doing this because that's how these big production companies do shit these days, is they gauge it based on, all right, are we going to do more Star Trek? Let's see how Strange New Worlds does. Discovery was very successful. Lower Decks is doing very well. If Picard is this smash hit blockbuster that leads their numbers to Season 2 Strange New Worlds being extra high, you can bet your sweet ass that they are going to jump on another Star Trek series in the late 25th century. Or in the 25th century, maybe immediately following Picard. Or Picard adjacent. And there's no reason why they wouldn't want to, I think, at this point. Because the overall reaction, like Lord Uther said, has relit every fandom fire around these 3 shows. And I guarantee their numbers are up on streaming all these shows now, too. Because you get that nostalgia wagon. You're going to go back and watch all these series over again. I know I did, and I probably will again. So that's my journey. Thanks for coming with me. With that, I do think we need to move to our Warp Core ratings for the first 4 episodes. If there's no other final thoughts.
Oh, no.
All right. So episodes 1 through 4, out of 7 Warp Cores, we'll start with Colonel Kurtz. What would you give episodes 1 through 4, Season 3, Picard?
10.
Yeah.
Perfect 10.
As high as we can go. The perfect 10 from the Russian judges. Yes, the storytelling, the music, it's all come together for me as Hope would have it. And as I said, my quibble with season 2 was that I thought we had a lot of storylines all kind of trying to fight each other for attention and space. And so at times we were watching the Picard, childhoods. At times we were watching Q. At times we were watching the Borg restaging. So I thought that this season early has said, no, we're gonna set the table and we're gonna put the crew through their paces. But this is what we're serving you. And I think UrzaMaster's made a compelling case. These DS9 references and all of these references to our late 80s, 90s Trek, they're not accidents. They're not just, whoops, how'd that get in there? Obviously, whatever castle that they're building, we're seeing the foundations go up here. We're on the road to the Dark Tower. And hopefully, now that we've caught up, now that there's no more world that we can explore until they deliver it to us, now we're just in that sort of dreadful suspense optimism, like, please don't fumble on the 5-yard line. Like, we have to put our faith and our hope in these storytellers to deliver, even if it's not what we were expecting, to deliver us something that restores our faith and renews our faith in why we fell in love with this franchise to begin with. And I mean, that's the most fun part of a fandom, but it's also the most nerve-wracking because you have to wait and see what comes next. and balance that with what you want to see versus, again, what they came up with in their own creative imagination. So now week to week, we'll be sitting there just, fingers and all applicable digits crossed, hoping that they can get this thing, punch through for the touchdown, and we go away happy and smiling. Because, I think the worst thing would be for them to just completely say, forget it, it's a musical. And, here's a delightful Brett Spiner number for you, Irving Berlin. Take it away, Brett. So, no. 7 out of 7 for me for episodes 1 through 4, and 6 more to go.
7 out of 7 because of 7 is all I have to say.
Nice.
No.
Hey.
Besides that fantastic job I did with that there. 7 out of 7. And let me tell you one more thing that they just did fantastic in episode. I'm just so stuck on this last episode, I can't help myself. I think it was key that they did not go away from the main storyline and go to Worf. I think it was key because it would have broke the rhythm of that episode. So though it might have been tempting to continue that even a little bit, that storyline, I think it was so important for the emotional pull that episode was doing to not cut away from them at any point and interrupt your chain of thought to be focused on that storyline.
Well, we, the viewers, we're trapped there with them by doing that. I mean, we don't leave the Titan, and so, yeah, we don't get to take a breath, take a pause. Well, meanwhile, there's an investigation. Here, we are with them, slowly sinking to our doom and hoping that they're going to, jumpstart the ship somehow and get them the hell out of there. So, yes, no, you're absolutely right.
Which I think sells, again, it sells the desperation of that episode and the situation that they're in. Look, this and Strange New Worlds is taking Star Trek to a place that it's going to help continue Star Trek, where I'm wondering how close we were to maybe not seeing it for a few years. I think that's how good these seasons have been. Really, that's how good. I mean, there, Colonel Kurtz, when you get a chance to watch Strange New Worlds, which I hope you start doing that this week, you're going to be talk about binging. I mean, you're going to watch them all in a row. It's that good. It's that good. And by the way, one last thing, because I've been meaning to bring this up on Digital Escape Podcast. There have been these rumors of rebooting Next Generation. Leave it alone, Paramount. I know you watch this anyway because we can tell that UrzaMaster is secretly a writer on the show. So with all that being said...
And a champion.
He's doing it right now before our eyes. Don't reboot. You'll ruin it. Use this wave to ride it into a new series.
Yes. 7 out of 7 warp course for me as well. I think we have 4 episodes of perfect television. I would really be reaching to find fault with anything they've done thus far. And I can't say that about even The Mandalorian, which I watched the latest episode today too, and it was brilliant. It was very well done. But there are elements to it that I'm like, was that necessary? Did that add anything? Not really. It was fun. Not so much here. Everything they put in, there are fun elements, but they always have significance or greater meaning.
Yes, I was just about to say, everything
foreshadowing.
Counts. Yeah.
Everything is relevant. And that's the beauty of what they do in Star Trek, again, versus Star Wars. Nothing against Star Wars. Mandalorian, I think, is also fantastic television. And I would say I've been a bigger Star Wars fan historically than Star Trek. But they're probably basically equal. So I feel qualified to talk shit about either one. I agree. No rebooting TNG. Do a new series with an Enterprise and a captain and a crew. Could be completely unrelated. No need for cameos. Started up in the 26th century.
Yeah.
You know, enough removed from this era that you can truly start afresh. And I would honestly strongly urge to keep same or similar styles as you've done with Strange New Worlds and as they did on TNG. Have those exploration... And okay, I have to qualify this because it sounds like I'm advocating for Monster of the Week episodes, and one of my favorite television series, Supernatural, and X-Files. They both did Monster of the Week episodes. I don't know if Kim Manners is to thank for that, rest in peace, but I don't like them. I love canon episodes. I love it when the overarching storyline gets moved forward, but they are absolutely essential to crafting an effective universe and to giving your crew credence. They're doing a brilliant job on Strange New Worlds with limited episodes. I also think if you're going to do a new Star Trek series, Paramount executives, don't put it on Paramount Plus. Put that out on whatever network and have it be weekly episodic for 50 episodes. Do a full year's episodes. Don't do these 26 episode seasons or these short seasons, 12 episodes or 10 episodes. I know you want to do cinema, but do 40-minute episodes. You can do plenty of those on a nice stage, on a couple of sound screens. The effects these days are so much better, but I would also urge them to use, traditional effects. Really try and make it true to Roddenberry's vision. I mean, Eugene Roddenberry is named in episode 4 as an executive producer. So I won't say they should reboot it, but I will say they should borrow a lot from TOS, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. Throw out Enterprise. There are merits to that show, I'm sure. I haven't seen it. And use that and hybridize it with what you've got with Picard and Strange New Worlds. I think Discovery kind of made attempts at that. I haven't seen that series enough. I will probably watch it eventually when I've run out of other Star Trek stuff to watch. But that's really the winning formula to establish Star Trek as a cultural phenomenon, which it was from 87 until 2001. Or 2002 if you want to count Nemesis. And I don't see them achieving it by changing the formula. I really don't. Putting a short series, even if it was a 24-episode series on Paramount Plus that ran for half a year and then you had to wait half a year to see the next season, I just don't think that formula works for Star Trek. You'll have that with your Strange New Worlds because it's that's where it grew. But I really think a true blue weekly episodic, commercials and all, and I hate commercials, I really think you're going to capture a huge audience that way. And you need to bring in a younger generation that still watches a lot of broadcast TV. I know streaming is the big thing, but if all it was broadcast and not available streaming, and I know it sounds contrary to every impulse TV execs have these days, I would hold off on doing any kind of streaming for years and let it be, if you missed it this week, too bad, so sad. Wait for the DVD release. And definitely have a physical media release, please. We all want it. I know Picard, Season 1 and 2 are out on physical. When it comes out as a box set, I'm going to buy it, for sure. Probably Black Friday, as I normally do. But there is just some kind of magic that TV shows like Modern Family or Big Bang Theory, or the recent revival of The X-Files, having been broadcast first and not available on streaming, really set a new fire for a lot of this fandom, or created a whole audience that gave you demand. And I know, shows don't run for 15 seasons like Supernatural did. Good shows anyway. You'll get your Law and Orders that do the same 5 stories every week, but I mean, let's be frank. This is something that if you're going to break new ground, and I know I'm a retro guy, go retro. Broadcast the new Star Trek on TV. Play it up with those 41 to 43 minute episodes. Do the 2-part, 3-part episodes. Build up new villains. Explore new parts of space. Have cameos if you want, but I don't think you need them. I think this new generation, Gen Z, and whatever's coming after it, Gen 000 or whatever. I'm thinking yogurt now. Whatever these generations have, they don't have this kind of magical TV that we grew up with, and that's why we love Trek. We love it because every week's a new story, and it may not have anything to do with anything else. The episode with the slave girls of Orion, that had nothing to do with anything until like decades later when they introduced the Orion Syndicate. That's just like, you can rebuild lore and reignite a franchise by taking this fire and carrying it like the Olympic torch. And I know I'm on a soapbox right now, but I'm very freaking passionate about putting stuff out the right way. Now, they're probably going to have it be on Paramount Plus, and I'm fine with that. I really am. I'm going to watch it no matter what. I'll be a little pissy and a little salty because they watch our podcast. They should know better. But, I mean, let's be honest. What do you guys think? If they said, hey, Star Trek's going to be coming out on UPN, and you're going to see... UPN, Jesus Christ.
I was going to say, bring it back.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to come out on, let's say, CBS, and it's going to be Wednesdays at 7 every week for 48 weeks out of the year, which is, in my opinion, the way it should be. Wednesdays at 7 or 8 Eastern, 7 Central. I would watch. I mean, that would be the only... I don't really watch broadcast TV anymore, if I'm being frank, other than a couple of shows that I love, most of which are now off the air. That would have me turning my television back on. Honestly. Commercials and all. And I fucking hate commercials. Even Super Bowl commercials. They all suck. Except for the ones that, are either part of my 9 to 5 or whatever. I do enjoy those. But I'm dying to get your thoughts. Do you think, is my idea valid, or am I talking out my ass?
I don't see it working.
Yeah, I mean...
I think it's too far gone. I'm sorry.
I don't think...
Amazon Plus... Oh, go ahead.
No, I think that executives... They're terrified that they're going to miss out on this younger generation, but what they don't see is that this younger generation, and I had the good fortune or misfortune, depending on your point of view of working with them, they don't have that loyalty, right? They don't want to tune in each week. They're the ones who are complaining, like, why are these things being dropped once a week? Why can't I watch them all in one 10-hour sit, and all through the night and have it there? I've made this argument because, again, certain streamers do things, certain ways. Netflix loves to drop everything at once. Amazon might drop the first 2 or 3 and then go weekly. Disney Plus and Paramount Plus, at least in my experience, seem to be, weeklies. I think if you watch Stranger Things in one 10-hour sitting, you get that, like, sugar rush, that oh my God, I ate all my Halloween candy in one burst. And then a week later, you're kind of reminding yourself, as great a show as it is, and I love Stranger Things, you're kind of like, well, wait, what happened in that? What? The details, your eyes kind of glaze over. It's not really a meal so much as just a gorge. And so I'm with UrzaMaster here. I prefer to have these things. I prefer to, like, sweat it out for the week on a cliffhanger. How are they going to get out of the nebula? Oh, how is Worf going to save Rafi this week or whatever? Like I kind of, that's how I grew up. That's how television was parceled out to us for so many years, and so that, I guess I'm a creature of old habit too. I don't want to eat all my candy in one sitting. I would prefer that you give it to me, one jelly bean at a time. So, what about you?
Well, I have no problem with week by week. I don't want it. Honestly, I don't want to binge on these because I want this. and I'm more likely to go back and watch an episode. I've already watched it twice, episode 4. So I want the time. Now, of course, part of me, there's a little part that's like, oh, I want to watch it all, because there is a rush that's happening with this. But I think when you've got great TV like you do now, your people are going to come back every week and watch. First of all, again, it creates chatter. We really know why they're doing it week to week, don't we? We really know deep down. You got to subscribe for longer. You can't order it for 30 days and then, I'm all done watching it and then get rid of it. You can't.
Yes.
You're going to miss out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a combination, Urza, I just don't go into 2, 5, and 7. I'm talking down here in Chicago. It's 2, 5, and 7. And channel 32 WFLD. Chicago.
I miss those channels.
Love it.
I don't think it's viable anymore, which stinks, because to Colonel Kurtz's point, how many frickin' subscriptions do I have to have? But that also goes to my point, because all my points are excellent, that there's just great TV out there right now. It's just, you can't really skip a service, or you're going to miss some great TV somewhere. To me, it's that.
I've skipped Peacock up until now, but I'm sure you guys will come up with a reason for me to shell out for that too.
No, I actually haven't.
Oh, all right. I do have a reason. I don't have Peacock either, but I just found out this week that that's the only place you can stream that 70s show. And with Netflix running that 90s show, I am really, I'm jonesing hard for that 70s show. I loved that series. They do have other good shows on there, but that's the one right now that's got me man, what's another $7 a month, But here's the thing, and this is, I go back to what I know of these younger generations, and they love to binge, but I think you're going to see that come back around. I really do. I mean, there's always going to be a place for I'll just wait until they're all out and watch it. There's always going to be people like that. Probably the later millennials and the early Gen Z. But I think later Gen Z and the next generation after that, they're going to get kind of sick of the instant gratification and the quick, easy high. They're going to want to slow down life in a way. And it's cyclical. We see it every couple of decades. I know from being a buff of history that there's always kind of an inversion of whatever is going on in the culture. Oh, yeah. And I think we're a little bit overdue for that, where I think we're at such a pace, and I think COVID is really what's going to be the catalyst. I think of just technology with the chip shortage and how things have had to slow down because the supply chain's just not there. Yeah. The supply chain's coming back, but I think people are starting to value sort of those. For some of us, it's nostalgia, and for some people, it's just discovering an older way of doing things that felt good. Like the people who garden and harvest their own vegetables. All those people on the reels and the tac-tacs that do the cooking. They're making really good gourmet meals at home, putting all this work in. Yeah, they're taking video and trying to make money. I do the same shit. But, they're actually putting work in to make something and make something worth having. And I think that's a trend that's going to keep going. They're going to want to see longer, more drawn out, not for the sake of the longer, tantric orgasm. They're going to want to see a payoff worth having. And I'll be honest, when stuff comes out too quickly or I binge it all at once, it's like a busted O. It's not worth having, honestly. And some people are into that, and that's cool. But, for me, it's just if I got all of the Mighty Ducks movies all at once, I probably wouldn't give a shit about Emilio Estevez. It's just me. But if they took their time and home video only came out once every 5 years, I'm on board. I hope Emilio's doing well with that D2 Mighty Ducks movie. Money. And I really think that there is a passion for cheapness and free, and broadcast TV is cheap and or free if you already have a TV gifted to you. And that's something that I think as we see stuff curve around in the economy, we're going to see eventually, my opinion, folks are going to want the quality that comes in stream form on broadcast. Even if they have to wait longer than the people who are paying for it, they're going to be okay with that because they're still getting the same content. Now, it may be that the language isn't as strong, or maybe the FCC lets them get away with stuff later at night, whatever. Totally fine, honestly. But they're going to want these quality stories, this quality cinematography, the quality music, quality writing, quality acting. You know, they want to see that, but they don't want to necessarily pay $140 a year for it, or whatever the prices are at that point. And that's just something we saw in the 70s and the 80s and the early 90s, and on until about 2000, is like shows were really heavily invested in. They're putting huge budgets on these streaming shows. They could stretch that dollar a lot farther if they broke it out the way they used to. And that's where a show like Star Trek is perfect for that, because you can take a cast of nobodies, which aside from Patrick Stewart and a couple of other players on TNG, everybody was a nobody. Nobody was anybody until that show hit success. So that's my soapbox. I know we're going on almost double time for one of our episodes of the Warp Core Podcast, available here at digitalescapepod.com and Digital Escape Podcast here on YouTube. But I think it's worth merit, and all podcast platforms, by the way, via audio. I think it's worth merit to say. There's such excitement around Picard that I want to temper that by saying, please don't fuck it up. Do the right thing.
Yeah.
Go retro. I don't keep these 2600 and 7800 games here for no reason at all, other than convenience of space. This VHS tape, that's there. I planned that, sort of. I also got done watching that June 23rd episode from 2000 of MTV's TRL. And it was great, sort of. There was a Kid Rock video on there, which kind of made me feel weird, because I really liked that song, and I was like, I feel weird about this these days. But hey, it's just UrzaMaster. I mean, I'm wearing a vinyl record shop t-shirt. We got retro Doritos going on, and the high taste of fashion from Lord Uther, as always. Typical Nike Coach material. Reppin' 23, it's red and black. I assume you're repping 23.
Always.
With that, we have boldly gone to Soapbox and beyond. We've gone on journeys. We weren't sure how to follow it. And at times we had notes. And so we thank you from the bottom of our many, many hearts for sticking with us on this longer episode of the Warp Core Podcast. Next week we will be talking episode 5 of Picard Season 3. Please tune in. If you're not already a subscriber here on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you are taking this all in at, please hit that subscribe button. Drop us a comment below. How many Warp Cores do you give the first 4 episodes of Season 3 of Picard? And as always, if you own a business or run a podcast or have a food truck or have any kind of a need for a website similar to what you see at digitalescapepod.com, Lord Uther, who should they go to? Who should they consult with?
They should go to the tippity top, to the only person around, Michelle at Peak Media. Will build you the perfect website for any business, any kind of blogging you want to do, selling anything you need. Michelle at Peak Media. It's the only place to go.
There's really nowhere else to go other than boldly to the great beyond. And we will see you next time.